May I have your attention, please? Will the real USC please stand up?
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you're listening to your podcast, the show is always free, and the show always appreciates your support. Today's episode, it's brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com and you can get started. I repeat, will the real USC please stand up? Don't worry. This isn't Marshall Mathers. I'm not going Eminem on you. I ain't going to start rapping, but I do want the real USC to step up and start dropping some words. And I want those words to leave a mark. Okay? Start kicking ass, taking names. I was watching highlights of USC boat racing Penn State in the 2009 Rose Bowl game. And I was like, I know that team. That's the real USC. I watched Mark Sanchez. I was at that game, but the highlights brought it all back to me. I watched him go off in what was his last game as a Trojan. By the way, one of these days, I'm going to tell everybody a really cool story on how Mark made his decision to leave for the NFL. As everyone knows, you might not, maybe some of you don't know, he and Pete Carroll didn't see things the same way. Anyways, different story, another day. Anyways, Miller Moss. He really reminds me of Mark Sanchez. That's who Miller's game reminds me of. Here, let me make the comparison. Mark Sanchez. He was a redshirt junior in that Rose Bowl game, 6'3", 225 pounds. Miller Moss, he's entering his redshirt junior season, 6'2", 210 pounds. Sanchez, a little bit bigger. But as far as their athleticism, arm strength, accuracy, all that quarterback stuff, pretty much the same. Mobility. When I see Miller in the pocket, I see Mark Sanchez in the pocket. They both had fantastic bowl games, right? We know that Miller mossed the Louisville defense with six touchdown passes. He was carving them up. Mark Sanchez in the Rose Bowl game against Penn State, amazing. 28 for 35, 413 yards passing. 4 of those were touchdowns. He also ran for another one. Just to remind everybody, okay? That was a really, really, really good Penn State defense. They weren't bad, not in the least. Everyone knows USC's defense that year was good. Penn State's they were in the same atmosphere. Let's put it that way. They were only giving up 265 yards per game. Mark Sanchez threw for 413 alone in that game. USC's defense that year, they were only giving up 206 yards per game. Trust me, I'll circle back. Stay with me. On offense, again, making the comparison. The 2008 offensive line, if I remember, okay, you had Jeff Byers, 6'4", 285 pounds. He was pretty good. You had junior Alex Parsons, 6'4", 300 pounds. Sophomore Chris O'Dowd, 6'5", 300 pounds. You had freshman Matt Meyer, 6'7", 300 pounds. Freshman. You might remember this name. He was only a freshman then. Tyron Smith. You had a freshman offensive lineman named Martin Coleman. Senior offensive tackle Charles Brown. Matt Khalil, Thomas Herring, Khalid Holmes. This year's offensive line in 2024, very similar. Nice mix of veterans, talented underclassmen. Your starting offensive line, left to right, more than likely. You've got Elijah Page, left tackle, Emmanuel Prignon at left guard. By the way, have you seen a picture of him on social media? Dude is sculpted. If he gets his footwork right, and he gets more technically proficient. Looking good. Anyways, where did I leave off? So Emmanuel Preyon, left guard. We know Jonah Monheim, center. Alani Noah, right guard. Preyon, Monheim, Noah. Each one of them are well over 300 pounds. So you've got the size inside. We got Mason Murphy, right tackle, over 300 pounds. 6 foot, 5? Big dude. And so behind those guys, again, a lot of talented, youthful backups. The wide receiver group in 2008, definitely more experienced. But you know what? I'm not sure I want to survive on the difference when you're trying to compare talent level to USC's 2024 class, or their 2024 wide receiver room. Deuce Robinson, Zachariah, Jacoby, Mackay. All 4 of them are sophomores. All 4 of them uber talented. And then don't forget, you got guys like Kyron Hudson, Jaden Richardson, Kyle Ford, Xavier Jordan. I know I'm missing somebody, and I apologize. Josiah Zamora. I'm trying to do this all off the top of my head. I apologize. I don't mean to leave anybody out. So if I did, forgive me. I'll get you next time. My bad. I'm tripping, as Kyle Ford would say. So wide receiver group, more experienced in 2008. I think more talented in 2024. Mock Nix. 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Same thing. USC was older at running back in 2008. But this group might be more talented, even though Joe McKnight was there in 2008. Young Joe McKnight. Back then, the offense was balanced. It was on point. You know, if you take away that game in Oregon State, in Corvallis, that team was going to win another championship. They should have been in the game. The difference between this year, offensively, and 2008, offensively, probably the difference between my finger and my forefinger and thumb. Yeah, you can't see it. The difference was on the defensive side of the ball, right? We all know that. 2008 defense was freaking one of the best college football has ever seen. Bottom line. Period. End of thread. They gave up less than 10 points per game. 206 yards per game. That's unheard of in today's era of college football. I would be curious to see how that defense fared. Anyways, I'm getting off track. Nick Perry, he was just a freshman back then. But you had Brian Cushing. He was a senior at linebacker, rush end, whatever you want to call him. He was scaring the guys on the other side of the line. Dude loved to intimidate. I mean, you've seen what he did when he was with the Houston Texans. I think I once saw Brian Cushing shoot a snot bubble at one of the opponents just to get inside his head. May or may not have happened. I don't know. You might remember Malcolm Smith was a linebacker on that team. He was good. He ended up being a Super Bowl MVP. He wasn't the guy on USC, though. Remember Michael Morgan at linebacker? USC has Eric Gentry. Same player. Long, lean, unique. You had Kaluka Mayava. Christian Tupou was playing nose tackle. Hello, Kobe Pepe. Clay Matthews was pretty good for a walk-on. You had guys like Maurice Simmons, Luther Brown, Chris Gallipo, some dude named Ray. Defensive line, you had Feely Moala, Gerald Washington, Kyle Moore, Jarrell Casey was a freshman, Everson Griffin, young Everson Griffin, Dejon Harris, Averill Spicer. Remember these guys? Oh, you had 3 freshmen. Remember these names? Armand Armstead, Wes Horton, Malik Jackson. Armstead and Jackson were the higher rated guys. Horton stuck around. Some of these guys went on to have big NFL careers, right? Most of these guys were just well coached, and they ended up being developed at USC, and everything just kind of clicked. That locker room had a vibe. They played with confidence, right? Remember what I spoke about on yesterday's episode of Locked on USC? Talked about what if USC comes out of the gate 3-0, 2-1. USC in 2024, they do not need the 2008 defense to compete for a chance to make the playoffs. They don't. It'd be great if they did. They just need to be significantly better than they were on defense last year and the year before that. I have a feeling the offense we saw in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville, against considered a really good defense, is what we're going to see in 2024, but with more run game involvement. I don't think they want to throw the game and have it rest on Miller Moss's shoulders. Not that he can't carry the team, but he shouldn't have to, right? Just get out there, play like Mark Sanchez. Now, would it be great if USC opened the season with a 52-7 win over LSU in Las Vegas, like they did when they won on the road that year to Charlottesville, beat Virginia? Yeah, I know. It ain't happening. Not trying to get anybody's hopes up that USC is going to roll out 52-7 on LSU. And I'll tell you right now, 35-3 isn't happening either. That happened a couple weeks later when they hosted Ohio State. So, no, USC won't go into Michigan and roll the Wolverines 35-3. But I do think this year's offense will put up points. I just need USC's defense to keep the opponent, to around 28, 30 points per game. And, if you think of it, that's kind of average. But you know what? That's going to be good enough. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. Imagine USC football 24/7, 365. Oof. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of the summer. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. You're watching Fox Sports. You're on ESPN all day long. Then you're hitting that volume. Turn it down. Someone's yelling. Can't concentrate. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel, and it's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Excuse me for a second. Take a sip of water. All right. So, is Juju Lewis going to Indiana? Sarcastic laugh. Maybe a little bit of let's get this over with. All right. Anyways, I saw Juju wearing an Indiana pullover on X today on social media. Remember, it's not Twitter. It's called X. Help me out. Get on the same page. How long are we going to extend this documentary, this whole docudrama? I'm not saying that Indiana's collective is looking for a return on their investment, but someone tell me, why would Juju find it necessary to post a pic on July 9th of him wearing the Indiana pullover? Big grin. Hey, I'm going to Indiana. I mean, does anybody really believe he's going to be playing football in Bloomington, Indiana? I don't. Or is he fulfilling a financial obligation? Juju's he's been very open about the process. He's been able to buy himself his first car. He bought his dad a car. So I'm probably not standing out there on the ledge by myself thinking, Juju's probably gotten paid every trip he's taken, including at USC. So I guess my question is, what's the point? Juju has been committed to USC, and And he's been since last year. I think like since August of 2023. But you know what? He's still out there. He's thinking on it. He's praying on the matter. I'll tell you what, if you want to make a fan base, any fan base, lose interest, keep doing this type of stuff. And this really isn't about Juju Lewis. Okay. Let's take his name out of the equation. This is, for me, this is more about the whole recruiting process and name, image, likeness. You've probably noticed I'm becoming a little jaded, a little less interested. Anyways, when guys are committing, fans are happy, right? Everybody's like, yahoo! When they're not, and they start decommitting, the fans turn into cannibals. Literally. They start eating their own. I'm sensing that the way things are changing, with the recruiting process, NIL, the transfer portal, free agency, fans are going to start losing interest when these young men keep dangling that carrot, talking about their commitment status. And then, and then eventually, when these guys have put their names on the dotted line, what's happening? What they're doing is they're setting themselves up for. Well, they should always be open for criticism, constructive criticism, but I think they're opening themselves up to even more. Now every little thing you do, every move you make, you're under the microscope. Where I'm going with this, and I know I've kind of touched on this before, there's a balance. There's a fine line that you have to walk when you're putting together a roster as a head coach. I think USC needs to focus a little bit more on the blue collar work ethic recruit and less on the transfer portal candidate type of recruit. What do I mean by that? Guys who want to be developed. More than that, the immediate gratification type of recruit. The ones that Oregon's hitting after. I'm not saying they don't want to be developed, but look, Oregon, Ohio State, there are a few programs out there right now that are they've taken the intent of NIL and they've thrown it in the trash, and they're writing checks for signing bonuses. You're not helping the situation. Immediate gratification does nothing for anybody. Yes, I get it. It's money you can't turn down. But it also starts to change how people do things. I used to coach high school basketball. I know all about incentives. And well, I don't know everything, but I have a pretty good idea of how to communicate and deal with the student athlete. Done it before. Now, I know times have changed since I've done it. Nevertheless, in general terms, things are still the same. So I see trends as they happen and before they happen. I was like, keep an eye on this. And I'm starting to get concerned that the instant gratification recruits are going to be the ones that need to be kept in check the most. They got paid already. Those incentives to chase, they're being removed. Look, let me use Malachi Nelson as a perfect example. Guy got paid. He was the dude. He was the guy. He thought he was coming into USC, and he was going to be the guy once Caleb Williams left. No, wasn't good enough. Didn't want to be developed at USC. He wanted instant gratification. He wanted to play right away. Didn't want to compete. And you know why he left? Because he could. Because of the transfer portal. Because he knows he'll have less competition at Boise State, and no reason to stay at US anymore. He's got a nice bank account. Go put up some big numbers at Boise State for a couple of years. Guess what? As a grad transfer, get to transfer again. Get another payday. If you don't, at least things worked out while you were in college. Not trying to degrade or knock Malachi Nelson. I'm just using him as an example of what's going on right now in college football, how I see things. I'm not saying I'm completely 100% accurate, but I think I'm on the right page. We see what's going on, guys committing, decommitting, using USC to get better deals elsewhere. Tell me that's not going on. Of course it is. So, is Juju going to Indiana? Probably not. Is he enjoying the process? Definitely. Should he just shut it down already? Absolutely. Because other recruits are out there saying, Juju, shut it down. Stop playing. Let's get USC's class going. Because you have parents of other players, other recruits. Juju locked in. If Juju all of a sudden decides he needs to do something different, you see how things can unravel. So close it down. Shut it down. Let everybody know you're not decommitting. The sooner, the better, by the way. So if USC beats LSU, if, two letters, big connotation. If USC beats LSU, I'm going on the record right now. I'm saying that Jakeem Stewart, defensive line, number one player in the class of 2026, he will commit to USC. Bold statement. And I'm saying he'll do it that week. It'll be the cherry on top of the sundae. USC is going to ride that wave of momentum. Remember, Jakeem Stewart, he's a stud defensive lineman from Louisiana. He loves Coach Henney a lot. You might remember I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. He came out to LA. It was during the Elite 11 finals during that whole week. And he spent some time over at USC's campus hanging out. He got in a good workout with Coach Henney, with the USC coaching staff. They were showing him, this is what it'll be like when you come here. This is how we practice. This is how we're going to develop here. He had a really good time. By the way, that day ended with a nice one-on-one conversation with Pete Carroll. I was a fly on the wall for that conversation. Jakeem Stewart loves LA. He loves USC. But before Stewart can commit, I also anticipate he's going to be doing his reclassification, and he needs to do that soon because I think his team is actually going to be starting fall camp soon, and all those details need to get ironed out. So right now, he is class of 2026. Very strong rumor from a really good source that he plans to reclassify into the 2025 cycle. So this is what I was referring to on yesterday's episode of Locked on USC, how quickly perception changes. Would USC like to have Isaiah Gibson and Justice Terry flip back again? Sure, right? Who wouldn't? I don't think that'll happen. However, you would now have a defensive line class, Jakeem Stewart, Hayden Lowe, Gus Cordova. Raise your hand if you're still mad at that defensive line class. Who are you? What's your name? And how many times were you dropped in your head as a baby? Because I don't know why you're mad. All of a sudden, you've got I don't know where he will end up in the re-ranking, but Jakeem Stewart is going to be a top 5 player. Hayden Lowe, one of the best defensive linemen in Southern California, staying home. Gus Cordova, severely underrated. He had to shut down his recruitment so the other programs would leave him alone. All right. So just kind of want to keep things focused on what could be, all right? Not me being a homer, sunshine pumper, but not everything has to be looked at through the negative lens. We can say what if and say, hey, you know what? We are still USC. Okay. Let's not lose sight of that fact. Will the real USC please stand up? I repeat myself. That's what we need to get back to. That's it. A little more on defense, a little more run game, a little more 2008. Look, USC could use some good news before media days arrive, which is like 2 weeks. I think USC might get a couple of wide receivers who might drop USC's name when they make their announcement sometime this month, including Galen McCutcheon, Tanuk Hines. He's the one who delayed his announcement. It was supposed to happen on Monday, July 8th. Houston's dealing with some weather, hurricanes, so we pushed it back. Like I said, USC could use some good news before media day. Getting a couple commits, that would help. I'll be at the media day, big conference media day. I'm going to see if I can get some one-on-one time with Lincoln Riley again. Did that last year at the last Pac-12 media day. We'll see how chatty he is this time. Last year, again, we sat around, had lunch together. Really enlightening. Really got to know who he is as a person. I think our birthdays are like a day apart. So personality-wise, we're like this. All right. That's it for this episode of Locked on USC. I'll be back again tomorrow, 5 times a week. That's what we do. I'll have some more news on USC. I'll probably have some updates on recruiting, and I'll figure out something else to talk about. Do me a favor. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're watching on YouTube, see that red subscribe button, click it. See that thumbs up, smash it. And I don't want you to miss an episode, so click that bell notification button. All 3 of these help the program, help the show, and I want you to be a part of the community. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.